Hello, my name is Fallforth, and I entered into the GDKO 2025 Game Jam recently. Today I'm going to go through the creation and submission of one of my first games ever, Skyline Rush. I'm not super good at using Godot. I do have some experience with it, along with other softwares like Sprite and Blender, so I have created some projects in it that I've either abandoned or set aside, so I wasn't exactly going in blind at the beginning of this. I entered the Game Jam almost a week in, so when I joined I already knew the prompt. The prompt was to create a core mechanic and a secondary mechanic that can be used for progression. Immediately when I heard this prompt, I knew what I wanted to do. I had created a game called Skyline Rush months ago, and I ended up abandoning it before it was done. It was meant to be a Faudian style game, but other projects ended up becoming more important. So I took that name and immediately began working on the new Skyline Rush's movement system, and I utilized several elements from the code in the last one, like the jump and movement mechanics. After implementing the basic movement system, I moved on to the core mechanic, which would be the forward dash. It was like kind of a vertical and horizontal dash that would give the player forward velocity and upward velocity at the same time, and it could be used once you leave the ground. I thought this idea was cool, so I moved on with it, and I eventually evolved the jump mechanic to become the secondary mechanic. The idea was that once you leave the ground, you get to use your jump mechanic and your dash mechanic one time each until you touch the ground again and they both refresh. This would mean if you were to fall off the ground instead of jump off the ground, you would get a jump and a dash while in midair. You get to use both of them, and you could do some advanced movement with this. It would be a pretty good movement system, I thought, and I went along with it. After that, I did a bunch of tests to calculate how far you could go on the dash and the jump and all the movement. This is really important in game design, to calculate how far you can go with certain mechanics and how high you could go, because it comes into fundamental level design. If you create a ledge that is just too far for the player to get to, or it feels too short, it really doesn't make the game feel good while playing it. So I thought this was really important. It's a tip that I had picked up a long time ago that I always do with my games, so I thought it was a good idea. Eventually I got the parameters down for how far you could go with the dash and the jump and how high each of them were, and so I moved on to creating the tutorial level. I used Blender to create a basic tutorial level with the movement parameters in mind. I made the basic jump mechanic. It teaches the player how to dash, it teaches the player how to jump and then dash mid-air, and then it teaches the player when the player falls off a platform, they can still jump and then dash. Next, I ended up creating these sprites that would hold the text in them that teaches you what to do throughout the tutorial level. I ended up billboarding them along the y-axis, meaning it rotates around its center pivot point towards the player, but it doesn't rotate downwards or upwards. In my Godot, I don't know why the up and down, the vertical axis is Y. In Blender, for me, it's Z, and every other program I've used is Z. I don't know why it's Y, but it's always been Y. I then created some simple text prompts throughout the level on these billboards to kind of guide the player through the level, and it worked out perfectly. I think it turned out great. At this point, I had grown out of the original movement system that I created. I wasn't super happy with it to begin with. I tried it out. I thought it would work for the Game Jam, but it wouldn't. I ended up experimenting with different friction things, removing friction, making the player glide better through the air, like at the end of a dash, but it ended up not working. I ended up just changing the entire movement system, which would have me reset the entire tutorial as well. This wouldn't be a super big problem because I can model a Blender tutorial level pretty quickly, and I had already created all of the textures and the sprites for certain things, so it wasn't really a big problem, but it was still kind of annoying. Instead of using this movement system or trying to create a new one, I ended up just importing mine from the old Skyline Rush game. And of course, this system is completely created by me. I created it over the course of several weeks while creating the original Skyline Rush game. It was very difficult to create for me because I don't have a ton of programming experience. I'm sure someone with more experience could have done it way faster, probably more efficiently, but I don't, and I got it done in the end, so I think it works fine. The new movement system was very similar to the last one. It also has a dash just like the first one, but this dash is just fundamentally different. The first dash puts you at a set velocity and set direction depending on the rotation of your camera. So if you dashed, you're always going to go the same velocity up and the same velocity forward in the direction that you are looking. The new one dashed directly towards where you're looking. So if you are looking up, you're going to dash up. If you're looking down, you're going to dash down. And if you're looking diagonally, say at a 45-degree angle, you're going to dash diagonally upwards and to the side at a 45-degree angle. Along with the new core mechanic, I also created a new secondary mechanic because I did not think the secondary mechanic suited this new core mechanic. So I created the boost dash, which is you can dash diagonally towards the ground, and you can skip or jump off of the ground, maintaining some of your velocity, and you get another dash because you jumped off the ground, you did not dash. This opened up a world of movement for the player. It was really fun to just use the player and how it worked, because you can do all sorts of movement with this system. It's very, very fun to use in my opinion. And I was very happy with this, as I was in my original Skyline Rush game. And so I felt it was needed and I implemented it. Along with these two new mechanics, I also implemented a system that helps the player use these mechanics. I implemented the dash bar and the horizon bar. The dash bar is the two pink and blue bars at the center of your screen. They empty when you use your dash, and the second dash would empty the blue one. I have not implemented the second dash yet. It will be implemented if I move on in the competition, and this helps the player visualize if they have their dash or not. The other part of the system is the horizon bar. It stays at the horizon level. So if you are grounded, you will know that if you aim below that horizon bar, you will be able to boost dash. This also helps the player get more distance while boost dashing, because they know how close they are to the horizon, because the closer you are to the horizon, the more horizontal velocity you will get, and thus the further you will go. This system is obviously explained in the tutorial to make it easier for the player to understand, because it may not be intuitive why the horizon bar is there, and I plan to make a setting to turn it off because many players may not want it, but that will be implemented in the update if I move on in the competition. So obviously, after I created this new movement system, I had to create a new tutorial. But as I said, I already had all the sprites and everything, so really all I had to do was measure the distances of what the player could do using the variables and the constants in the code to measure how far the player could go, how far or how high the player could jump, dash, etc. All of those parameters were important so I could create the tutorial level. So after creating the tutorial, I moved on to the overworld, which I would be calling the Skyline in the game. And what I wanted to do is create a Faudian style world, and the higher you go, the harder it would get, like any other Faudian game. The world would be separated into layers and they would be color coded. I plan to use color theory to make the levels match each other. So I would, for example, I would have a blue level and it would have orange as complementary, or a purple level with yellow as complementary. I thought this was a great idea to just color code the levels, and so like the first level might be the green level, and the second level might be the blue level, and so on to correlate these colors with how difficult the levels are. While this was the plan, and it still is the plan if I move on in the competition, I did not have enough time to implement it. So I ended up just creating a basic overworld level that goes from the bottom to the top. There is a basic theme going on in this level, but it's not super well implemented. It's just white and dark blue, so the color's not great either. But when if I move on in the competition, I plan to implement this layering type of world, but I will see if I move on, and I will implement it if I do. So this is all I have from stage 1 of the GDKO 2025 competition. I made a ton of stuff in this video that I did not cover. If you would like to know anything about that, leave it down in the comments. I'll answer most, if not all, the questions in the comments. I'm also putting a comprehensive list in the description of everything I plan to add to the game if I move on in the competition, and it will show you what the game could be in the future if I move on. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you like this kind of content.